kick off hour number 2 by bringing on our guest, Mike Pawlawski, color analyst for Cal football, Cal Hall of Famer, former NFL quarterback, Arena Bowl champ, joining us here on the show as we continue to preview Syracuse and Cal on Saturday. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and I want to get in on that extra $1 million left over, just in case.
All right. I'll put you in my will also.
Yeah, Paulie
I appreciate that. See, it's all about being in the right place at the right time.
Exactly. Paulie asked the question last segment, if you could get $40 million, but Mike Tyson got one swing at you, would you take it? So that's what we were discussing in the last segment.
Without hesitation, you absolutely take that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You might not be here, but
it won't be fun for maybe a couple weeks, but after that, it'll be great.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, let's talk about this Cal football team. And, it seems like, they're having a good year. It seems like they're a couple plays away from having a really good year, right? 4 losses by a combined 9 points. What do you make of this team now that we're at the three-quarter mark of the season?
Well, so the fact of football is that it exposes kind of where the weaknesses are, and you are where you are because you did the things that you do as a team. But from a coaching perspective, as a former player myself, this Cal football team should be 9-0. If it wasn't about the opponent, it wasn't about other things going on in the field. It was about them making the plays that they should have made, easy plays like converting on field goals, not jumping off sides, the pre-snap penalties, little things like that. They weren't necessarily out-physicaled by any team that they played. And so they should be undefeated at this point in the season. However, they've done the things that they did, and so they aren't. They're 5-4. And it's a huge difference. You can talk about the point spread. In 4 games, they lose by 9 points, right? 2.25 points per loss on average. But because they weren't able to execute in those moments, they're where they are. But they're a team. It's a very good football team. They're talented. Their defense is exceptional, especially the run defense, which doesn't play a lot in this game. But they're a very good team, very well coached, and they're literally just a few mental mistakes away from being perfect for the season.
So how do you, define what you've seen? And I know there's still 3 games left, and then a bowl game presumably. So 4 games left. Do you look at this? Year 1 in the ACC, has it been a successful year, or is it a disappointing year because of of those close calls that went the other way?
Well, so anytime you go into a new conference, it was funny. Somebody asked me to talk about all the teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference, the ACC, and I'm like, well, I started going down the list, and they're like, well, what about Virginia Tech, or what about the other teams? I'm like, yep, that's right. A Pac-12 I had cold. So getting to learn the new conference and understand who you're playing is one thing. Understanding how to handle the travel, right? The travel is brutal, and that's a big piece of it, coming from the West Coast. But we are literally the closest Power 4 university to the Pacific Ocean. And so for us to travel all the way across country, it's brutal. So, but figuring that out as a team, figuring that out as a program, and then the other sports is going to be interesting. The Olympic sports, it's going to be tough. But then playing, the teams have all been fantastic. Every team that we've played, I've really enjoyed. But I think on a success level, the team should be better than where they are, and they know it. We talk to Coach Wilcox every single week. They really they have the opportunity to make a much bigger splash than they did going in. So now they have to finish the season by making the splash here.
Interesting note from a Syracuse perspective. This is the furthest in terms of mileage that Syracuse has traveled for a game since. Do you know this off the top of your head, Paulie?
For a football game, Arizona.
How about Tokyo?
Oh, that's
back
right.
in 1989. So that gives you an idea.
Big one.
Yeah, that is a big one. So they're not quite going to Tokyo, but this is the furthest that Syracuse has traveled for a game since then. So going back to 1989. So a big deal, certainly for the Syracuse program as well. All right, let's talk a little bit about the personnel, if we could, Mike. And let's start at quarterback with Fernando Mendoza and what he's brought to the table this season.
So I love Fernando Mendoza. He is a guy who came in with only one offer, and it was an offer from an Ivy League school. So that was his only offer coming out of high school. It was relatively unknown. They brought him into Cal, and he is a guy that has worked incredibly hard to learn how to play the position properly. He played wing T for a little bit in high school, so he didn't get – I know this because I played in the wing T myself in high school. Didn't get a lot of coaching on playing the position like you do at the college level. And so he had to learn on the job here at Cal, took over midway through last season, and all he's done is improve every single game. Fernando and I spent a lot of time together in the offseason working on the mindset of playing the position of playing quarterback. And he's a guy that he does everything in his power to be a great player, and it shows up. Last 2 weeks, he's had his best 2 games of his college career, thrown for 354 the week before, and then 385 last week, 2 touchdowns in each game. He just keeps getting better. He's an incredibly accurate passer. He's sneaky athletic, so he does a lot in the run game. Last game, he was actually the number 1 rusher and the top passer, so he counted for 436 yards of total offense himself. But he just keeps getting better every game.
I'm sure that you saw how much Syracuse struggled stopping the run last week against Boston College, and you just said that Mendoza's coming off 2 of his best games ever. Do you anticipate that Cal will try to run the football a little bit more, given that SU has shown that, at least last week, couldn't stop it?
You have to. You go into a game like this, and you think, they're 128th in the country in terms of rushing defense, so you want to exploit the weaknesses of the other team. That being the case, Cal has not been effective running the football this year, and I think that, in large part, is why they have those losses that I talked about earlier. In order to finish games off, you have to be able to run the football, and if you can't do that, it's difficult to close out games, and Cal has been unable to close out games because they haven't run the football well. And so I think they will try. Jaden Ott was one of the best running backs in the country last year. He had a little injury early on, and this year he hasn't been very effective. But that's due in large part to offensive line play rather than Jaden himself. So the Bears need to run the football. They need to find a way to be more effective in the run game. And hopefully this week is the catalyst one.
What do you make of, I know we touched on SU's run defense. What do you make of this Syracuse team as you get prepared to call this game? What stands out to you about the Orange?
Well, so obviously Kyle McCord is a fantastic quarterback. The guy can throw the football all over the field. He's accurate. He's instinctive, so he's really good with where he's making his throws. So I think that's a huge piece of it. Looking at a guy, that's my position as a quarterback. That's a position I love. I coach elite quarterbacks out here on the West Coast, and so I love watching him play. He plays with confidence. He plays like a 5-star guy at the position. So that's where you got to start. And then you have the tools that create mismatches. When teams have 1 receiver or 2 receivers, you can play coverages that take away those guys. But Syracuse has the mismatches across the board with a lot of very talented receivers. Peña's a guy who just goes and gets it, and he finds a way to get open. But then you also have Aronde Gadsden. And a little side note here, his father and I actually gave each other concussions in the Arena Football League. Because I played against his dad when his dad was with the Portland Forest Dragons. And I thought, he's just a little receiver. I'll run him over. Well, he was about the same size as his son. And when we hit, we both ended up with a concussion after that one. But the son is a chip off the old block. He's a really good football player, and he's a massive mismatch problem for the Bears, who have struggled at that nickel position. So they need to figure out how to handle all of that with a potent offense. And then if you flip that around, the defense running that 3-3 stack is a team that it's kind of playing dodgeball, where you're not exactly sure where the pressure is going to come from or what look's going to dictate. So you have to figure out how to pick it up in protection. But you have the opportunity, and this is why their run defense has not been great, to gash them in the run if you hit the right seam at the right time. So it's a challenge offensively to stop the passing game, which has not been the Bears' strength on defense. And then it's a challenge offensively to find those seams to take advantage of them in the run game and then to protect in the pass game.
Since you brought up your time in the Arena Football League, one of our colleagues here is from the Albany area, and we promised him we were going to ask you about your time with the Albany Firebirds and winning the Arena Bowl, and what was that like? So, I mean, listen, you had a lot of great experiences as a player. Where does that one kind of rank, and what do you remember about, what comes to mind, I guess, about that championship run?
Well, so Coach Daly, Mike Daly, who's our head coach, is one of the he's probably my favorite coach of all time. And I've had some really good coaches over the course of my career. But he decided that he was going to build a high-character team. And I told him when I signed with him, I said, look, if we build a high-character team, I'll help it. I'll help you win a championship. And so that's what we went about doing. When I came in as a quarterback, he came in as the head coach and put together a team full of guys who were just high-quality, high-character, high-effort guys that went on to be a really fantastic football team. And so I really enjoyed my time in Albany. I've got A lot of great connections to upstate New York. A lot of great people that I still love back there. But that team, we got voted the greatest team in the history of arena football. And so it was because you had high character guys that gave high effort, that really cared about it, and that made it, as a team, the imperative was on winning a championship and being good to our teammates. And that's the chemistry that makes for a great locker room.
One more for you personally, and then I do want to get your prediction on this game, but I know that you just released a book, Everyday Great, the playbook for winning at everything. What can you tell us about that book, and how can people find it?
So I grew up actually with lung disease. I had cystic fibrosis. And so I had to learn early on that what we do in life, we are always training. No matter whether you're training to be great or training to be bad, the stories that we tell ourselves and the things that we learn over the course of our lives dictate our outcomes in the future. And I was able to put that in perspective, both with my football career, how it worked with my teammates, seeing in action there. And then also, I became an entrepreneur when I was done. I started my own TV production company, became a national broadcaster for NBC, ABC, everything else. And I saw that the same lessons that I learned overcoming lung disease and winning a world championship in the Arena Football League apply to business and life in general. And so the book is really the simplest way for people to improve their performance on an everyday basis, to find their purpose in life, and to create fulfillment for themselves, right? To create that happiness they crave. And it's on Amazon. You can pick it up. But if you like the stories that we talk about in terms of sports and Albany and everything else, there's a ton of stories in there, because I am a storyteller by nature. I love using stories because stories are how we learn lessons as people. It's how we encode lessons for our brain and our body. And so I love using stories to teach lessons. And that book is about using those stories to teach you the lessons that win at everything you do in life.
All right. And with that being said, come 6 o'clock Eastern time, 3 o'clock Pacific on Saturday, what's the story that's going to be told about Syracuse Cal?
It's going to come down to the wire, I think, because that's what every one of Cal's games does, is it comes down to the wire. I think if the Bears can figure out a way to rush Kyle McCord, to get him off balance, off platform, then it gives them a much better chance. They need to figure out their matchups. Offensively, the Bears need to run the football enough and be effective in the pass game, but it will come down to the wire, and it could come down to a kick. And so I think that's the story that you're going to come to find out. Cal fans are hoping it's going to be Cal. Syracuse fans obviously hoping it's going to be the Orange on the road. But it'll be a fun game to watch because there will be some high energy offense.
All right, so you agree with us that the plus 9, or the 9-point spread seems like a little bit of a big spread for this game. You think it's going to come down to a one possession game? Yes,
I do, especially based on Cal's history this year. And so I think that it feels like a big spread to me. Now, I would never bet against the Vegas guys, because those guys seem to be right more times than they're not.
Right.
That's how you put up casinos, is by winning.
Right.
And so they're pretty good about it. But I do feel like that's a bigger number than you're going to see on Saturday.
Yeah. All right. Us as well. All right, Mike, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
A pleasure, guys. Anytime. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Mike Pawlawski joining us here on the show. And with that, we'll take a time out. We've got today's business coming up next. Bryce Gelman coming up at 1:30. Back after this on ESPN Radio.